I'm speaking with Carolyn Link, the co-writer and the director of When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit. Hi, Carolyn.
Hello. Hi.
So, I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit, and one of the things I liked about it is it's really more of a refugee story set against the backdrop of World War II than it is necessarily a film that's explicitly about escaping from the Nazis. And I like the fact that it really puts the viewers in the mindset of Anna, the young girl who's missing her home country, but also wants to belong in her new country. I was really curious, what drew you to telling this story?
Um, when Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit is a very famous book here in Germany. Judith Kerr is German, of course. The story starts in Germany, in Berlin, in 33. And she wrote that book when she was, I think, about my age, over a little over 50. And she talked about her childhood in Germany, and she talked about how the family escaped the Nazis and went on the journey through Europe. And I had to read this book when I was about 10 years old. We all had to read it. It was a must in school for us. And I was a little bit afraid of that book. I remember I was about 10 and we read it, and I thought, oh my God, another novel about National Socialism. And we were all scared that it might become very cruel and horrible, and that you can hardly bear it as a child. But then I was very grateful to Judith Kerr that it was not cruel on the outside, but that it was very intense anyway. I think she managed to talk about her childhood, which was, of course, very sad in a way, but also always optimistic. And her father, Alfred Kerr, was able, I think, to show his children that even in the horrible situation they were in, there's always some light to see. There's always something positive to see, and there's also always something you can learn from the situation that you are put in.
Right.
Without playing the situation down, without pretending nothing happened. Anna was very sad that she had to leave her home. She was a happy child in Berlin, but the father, especially, I think he managed to show both his children. Look, this is Paris. Look where you are. Look. Not only don't always look back, but also enjoy the moment right here. See what is happening here. Maybe we can learn from the situation we're in. And that was amazing for me as a 10-year-old girl to read about it, that it is always worth trying to do the best out of the situation that you're in.
I was also one of the things that I really like about the story that I was curious what your thoughts were on is really getting into that immigrant experience or refugee experience where you really come across people that are very friendly to you and are seem to be glad that you're there, and you come across people that maybe aren't so happy to see you in their country. I was wondering, that seems like that's a very important message for our time.
Yeah, I mean, I always had a little bit of hard time comparing the fate of Familie Kemper in the book, the family, with the fate of the people who come in rubber boats through the ocean to us, to Europe, to survive, and who come from extreme poverty and war, and are all traumatized and in very, very difficult life situations. Because of course the refuge, is that a word?
Yeah.
Refuge Family Camper has been always very privileged in a way, because they still had some support from Europe, and they still had a little bit money for themselves. So when they go to Switzerland and when they go to Paris, even though they became poorer and poorer for a long time, they still knew how to survive. They still had food on the table. Yeah. But I think maybe especially because Anna is so much a girl from our world, I thought that children who see that movie and young people who see that movie can easily identify with her. Anna is not a girl from an extreme situation. She's not a girl that comes from a very poor country. She's a girl from the middle of our society. And when she is told one day to the other that she has to leave her home, her country, her friends, everything, her beloved family, you know, then I think for children it's easy to see how unjust, how incredible the situation was for the Jewish families at that time. From one day to the other, she learns that she's Jewish. She didn't even know that she was Jewish. From one day to the other, you know, she's told, and you are not welcome here anymore. You have to go. And many children who saw the film in Germany, when I talked to the audiences, they were, was it really like that? It's unbelievable. And was it really true? They didn't do anything. No, they didn't do anything. They just had to leave because they were who they are.
Right. And you bring up a really interesting point when you're talking about showing, talking to children seeing the movie now, and also when you read the book as a young girl. The film got me thinking about how countries deal with their own past. So in the United States, we always face the dilemma with telling stories, especially about slavery. There's a lot of people in this country who feel like we've made too many movies or shows about that, and we don't want to see those anymore. But it's stories that we have to tell. There's no healing that happens unless you tell these stories. I was wondering, how has it been for you in Germany? Is there much resistance to telling stories about the past?
I think there have been a lot of stories about our experience and our behavior, or how do you say, in World War II, and about National Socialism, of course.
Mhm.
And people are starting to get tired of the stories if they are told in always the same way. I think you have to be very careful on how you tell the stories. If
Mm.
the characters are too simple, if there's always good and bad, and of course there is a lot of bad and evil in that chapter of our history, but I think you have to try to find new perspectives on the stories. And I think that was something that I felt very attracted to in this book, because Judith Kerr, she is German, you know, she always she never stopped loving Germany and her home country, and she tells that story in a very subtle way. You know, there is how do you say, a little bit of melancholy in the whole
Yeah.
story, even though it's never really horrible and cruel, and there is nobody really who hurts the family. Just one French lady who works in the house. You know, she's the only one who discriminates
Discriminates. Yeah.
in the story, in the movie. You know, but still you dive into the soul and heart of this little girl, and you when you read the book too as a little girl, I was so hurt that this innocent
Mm.
girl had to go, you know. And yeah, like I said, she Judith Kerr never played the pain down, and still it's not a book that you have to be afraid of, because it hits you so much with cruelty that you can't bear.
Right. Speaking of this little girl, the character of Anna, you got such a wonderful performance from, how do you say her name? Riva?
Riva Kremalovsky, yes.
Right. And I know you've had a lot of experience directing younger actors. What is your approach to directing these children, and to casting them?
Yeah, I think casting the right child for a part is like almost 80% of the whole job that you have to do, because other than trained actors, of course, they cannot jump from one character to the other, and they cannot completely, children cannot completely change themselves, I think. Riva is very much Anna, and Anna is very much Riva in this film. You know, she brings so much from what I saw in Anna, that I thought she's perfect after doing one casting with her. You know, she has the energy, she has the sensitivity, she has a deepness, maybe because the whole story of Judith Kerr family means a lot to her family, because she comes from a Jewish background where she is very, how do you say, she's very informed about the past of German history. And so I think everything that she said and everything that she says and does in the story falls very deep, like in a deep well. She understands what she's playing, you know. Like, for example, in that scene when the friend from Germany comes and gives the clock from the dead uncle to the family in Paris and says, "This is something that Uncle Julius wanted you to have and to keep." She takes that clock, pocket watch, and she blows it and she starts crying. And I never told Riva that she should cry in that scene. I never even thought that that is necessary, that she cries, but she had to cry. And when I asked her afterwards, "Why are you crying, Riva?" "Yeah, I didn't tell you to cry." Yes, but the imagination of all that is so sad. She was so in the part, you know, she was so in the part. And that is something that trained actors really have to work hard to be in
Yeah.
that situation. And it came from her naturally because she understood what she was playing, I think.
That was amazing. I was really struck in particular by her interactions with the father, in that I
Yeah.
found there was a real intimacy between them, just down to her playing with his suspenders while she's talking to him, which I rarely find that in those kinds of performances in films.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's a collaboration between Oliver Masucci, the father,
Mhm.
and Riva, and I have a little part in that too, because I sometimes I tell her things like that. She does that once in a rehearsal, that she says her lines and she wants to get back to playing with the other kids outside, and then she goes bing, bing, bing on his suspenders, and I remember that, Riva, remember that. That is great. While you're talking to him, play with his suspenders, and then like, of course, we do it together. You know,
Mhm.
she is not always completely 100% concentrated in the scene. Sometimes she's more there than in other moments. But when she does in one rehearsal something that is great, then I keep reminding her, of course, do that again, do that again. It's not only improvised all the time. You collect ideas, movements, positions. And sometimes it's a very, with children, it's a very, how do you say, outside work, you know. I'm not only talking about feelings with a child, I'm also talking about position, hold your head like that, play with the
Mhm.
suspenders, or when she jumps on his lap, when in Berlin at the beginning, when she has a fever and he has a fever in the bed, that she does that once, that she plays with his ear, and I remind her, do that again, that was nice. So we do it together, you know.
Mhm. I like the way you talk about it. You're very direct and open that, yeah, you have to tell them to do this. I find a lot of directors are a little more vague as they talk about these
No, I
things.
mean, it's you know, it tells me, working with children really tells me a lot about working with actors in general. And
Mm.
actors, trained actors, of course, they always want to talk with you about psychology of their characters. And that is sometimes, and I think absolutely this is 100% necessary, but I prefer to do that before the first day of shooting. We sit together in a restaurant or at my kitchen table, and we talk hours and hours about the story, about the background of the story, about their characters and all this. But on the set, sometimes acting for the camera is a matter of effect too. It's not only psychology, and that is the difference to theater, I think, because um, when I tell Riva, put your head like this and keep on playing with his suspenders, and then it is she's not aware of what effect this has
Right,
to the camera and to me as an audience. And
right.
I sometimes also do that to adult actors, that I say, um, believe me, when you take that pen while you tell her I love you, then it has a much deeper meaning if, than if you look into her eyes. Yeah, it's
Right.
an
Yes.
outside way of directing sometimes, and I learned that a lot from children,
Mm.
because it all comes from them. But I use it sometimes in different contexts, and I
Mm.
use and I use it in different situations, and I remember it because they did it once, and or I watched them playing off screen. You know, I watch them in lunch break, and I
Mm.
use movements and things I collect, and then I redirect them when I
Mhm.
need. And sometimes that's very outside directing, you know, not only inside.
No, it makes perfect sense, and it does have it has an impact on the viewer. It kind of leads your emotions, and the way you view and relate to the character.
Yeah.
Uh, particularly movements, I think that even if they're not movements that you personally do, they're movements that are very familiar to you, that you just understand the character, that makes the character more believable, perhaps.
Yeah, or sometimes people think they are playing something or acting something that I do not see. They
Right.
feel a lot, they feel a lot, and they feel intensely, but it doesn't come across, it doesn't speak to me as an watcher. And I think what I know I can do quite well is watch. I
Hmm.
see what I see and I see what I feel. And sometimes they think they show me something that I must feel, but I don't feel it. And so I try to intensify it by telling them, I think I need another gesture. I need another, just a head position. I need another camera angle. Sometimes it's
Right.
something physical too, just stand there, because when you stand there, it doesn't feel that way. Even though you feel it, I don't see it.
Right.
So since I work a lot with children, I dare to direct grown-up actors sometimes like that too, because I realize it is helpful. It is helpful
Hmm.
sometimes.
And fortunately for you, you're at a point in your career where they have to listen to you.
That's true. I mean, of course, I always see what they offer, and sometimes it comes with a natural. Like for Oliver Masucci, he's a wonderful actor,
Mhm.
and he has such a natural way with children, how he grabs them, and doesn't make a big deal about them, but loves them dearly, because he
Right.
has 3 children that he loves so dearly. And I can see by the way he is with his children that he doesn't make a big deal about them, even
Mhm.
though his heart is full with love for them. And sometimes actors who don't have children, they make, oh my baby, listen and listen. But I like how he treats, and I told him that I watch you, how you are with your children, and be like that with Anna, because
Mhm.
I love that. That's so natural. You can talk
Mhm.
to her and don't even look at her, but the intensity is there. It's a
Right.
natural intensity, and that's
Right.
beautiful.
You said something earlier about it, even just changing the camera angle or something, and that there was something that I really noticed in particular with your directing. I'll just talk about this film. Um, you had certain shots where I would say you pull back. The camera's a little further away than far enough away that it's noticeable. For instance, when Hempy is saying goodnight to the children, and the camera's actually kind of down the hallway, and you're seeing both bedrooms. I was curious to know why, what leads you to these choices. Is this more instinctive? Do you have something in particular you're thinking of when you do the shots this way?
No, I sit when I do, and I don't know the word in English again. When I do the camera positioning with my, I don't know, the setup. Is that the setups?
Yeah, yeah,
When I
yeah.
setups, with
Mhm.
my camera. In this case, a woman, a camera woman, Bella. We talk a lot about what kind of effect we want, of course,
Mhm.
and then we think of, okay, where do we put the camera if we want this emotion or this effect to come across. And especially in the children's room in Berlin, when Heimpi sits on the bed and she says to Anna, Auf Wiedersehen, Anna, Auf Wiedersehen, which she says every night, but this time it means something else.
Mhm.
Then the camera knows more than the characters. The camera is already gone. The camera
Mhm.
is already in Switzerland. So that's why we decided to go back, because they feel what we see, or they feel what we see. This is goodbye, this is auf
Yes.
Wiedersehen. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
that's why we chose the distance, because there is no closeness anymore possible.
Mhm.
And the same with Uncle Julius. um, yeah, I mean, the scene that we worked a lot on was also when the parents leave Switzerland, and when in the last second Anna has that thought, Mama, Mama, but you're coming back, right? You're not leaving. You don't forget us. Forget it. I am not going to forget my children. No, how can you think that? And we thought of, okay, that has to be really emotional, that she she doesn't ask her that 2 nights before. She asks her that in this moment. By the way, you don't forget us, right? And so we did a lot of camera positions, and we chose in the editing room what we do.
It was very effective, actually, and just the way you described the effect you were going for, I think it worked perfectly. And
This is already, that's not only a question of camera positions, it's also a question of the screenplay, I think, and of the novel. A lot of good ideas are from Judith Kerr, really, because she understands a lot about children and about their logic. And also in the screenplay, Anna Brüggemann, the co-writer, and we tried to uh, do what I always think is necessary to make a good movie, is that we go very much into details. I don't want so much plot. I want details. You know, I want images that stay forever with you. And I don't want great stories. And I'm always confusing my film students on film school when I tell them forget all about this plotting all the time and all what they tell you about developing a good story. Yes, it's important. I know it's important, of course. But the most important thing, even much more important than all that, I think, is to develop great characters and moments. Moments you don't forget. Yeah. Like, for example, when Anna says goodbye to Vreneli, to the little Swiss girl, and they lie under the skins, the deer skins, and how they talk to each other, and they hide under the deer skins. And these are images. The girls played with those deer skins while we were there, and that's where I had the idea, let's do it. And I convinced the producer, let me do the scene in there. I need an extra half day for that, but that is beautiful. You will remember that, how they talk under the skins. And I think that's, moments and characters. That's the key to good movies, I think.
I absolutely agree with you. Actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking of a few movies and realizing that it always is much more the scene than it is the story. That really stays with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. That, at least with me, it does that. Like all the Wim Wenders movies that I love because of moments, and sometimes not so much about stories, because sometimes they are very long. But moments I will never forget, and that's enough for me. Then I'm not bored. I'm perfectly happy if I have moments that I think, wow, I will never forget that moment.
Right.
There are American movies too, not only European movies. There are American movies too, where I thought, wow, that was written beautifully, that was acted beautifully. This is just a moment I will never forget. And I make movies, and when I'm writing, I'm already thinking about moments why I want to do this movie. And it's more moments than the whole story, many times.
Now, for our American audience here, a lot of them are not going to be aware of the fact that you're a very successful director in Europe, especially in Germany, obviously, to the point that I think at this point in your career, people have expectations, some expectations of what they're going to see in your films to a certain degree. You have a particular style, and what I found interesting when I was just reading a little bit was the fact that you didn't really know that you wanted to go into films as a child. That came to you a little later. I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Oh, this is really boring. No, because I come from a family that has absolutely nothing to do with art whatsoever. My father and my mother, they had a restaurant together, and my mother is a bookkeeper usually, in offices. And they were very loving parents and wonderful parents, or they are. In fact, my dad doesn't live anymore, but my mom still is. So they are great parents, but they never really pushed us into anything, and they never expected anything, which was a great blessing, because they never thought that we have to become something huge or big. And so when I said I want to go to film school, they said, well, if they take you, yeah, sure, do it. Why not, And so it was a surprise that they took me in film school. And then they were so enthusiastic about every step I made. So I had no pressure whatsoever on my shoulders with my parents. And that was really something I have to remember now when I bring up my daughter, that no expectations, and just, believing in the strength of your children, that they will find their way. As long as they do something, has been the lesson, for me, for my parents.
And where did you get made you think of going to film school? When did that become something that you thought of as a possibility?
You know, I really think what I always knew is that I would love to do something with children.
Mm,
Um, and even though I started to feel a little bored with everybody telling me, "Oh, you work so great with children, make movies with children." I thought for some years, I thought, I don't want to make movies with children anymore. I want to make artistic, grown-up movies. But still, my heart beats for children, and
mhm,
especially for children who have a difficult time. So I always told everybody, even when I was a teenager, I would like to do something with children, work with children. I thought for a while I become a children's psychologist or a teacher, even for special kids with special needs or
mhm,
whatever. And I think sometimes maybe that's my was my advantage always, that I have something that I can talk about, because I'm so interested in children that I read a lot about education, about psychology, about kids. I always worked with children. I always have many children around me because in my
mhm,
life there are many children. um, and so I know what I'm talking about. At
mhm,
film school, when I'm teaching, I ask sometimes the students, what do you want to make movies about? What is your subject matter that really drives you, where you really have something to say?
mhm,
You know, and then sometimes that's the most difficult part of filmmaking, because they have the technology in Germany on the film schools. They even have the money because they get the money for their movies, but they have nothing to talk about,
right,
and that's the problem, you know. So I always knew, okay, if I have no idea, I can always talk about children, because children I love with all my heart. I will always
mhm,
find a story with a child.
mhm.
So
You know,
yeah.
when you're running a film festival and you have thousands of films submitted to you, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people there that have the technology, but it's unclear what it is what story they're trying to tell.
Yeah, and
It,
I always tell students, you know, you can talk about anything as long as you go into the details, in the characters, and in the moments. You know, like if somebody tells me I make a movie about love, okay, how many books or songs or movies have there been about love? But if you manage to tell your story about first love, love, whatever, about romantic love, whatever, if you manage to make it personal and individualistic and unique, then it's a great subject matter, the best that there is, you know.
mhm,
It doesn't matter about what you make a movie. I don't really like those theme movies where you talk about, yeah, bringing up the wall or tearing it down here in Germany, or always the same subject matters, or sexual abuse or whatever. It's great, but it's only a good movie if the characters are interesting
mhm.
and good, you know.
Absolutely. Carolyn, thank you so much for spending some time with us. It was a wonderful movie, and hopefully we can have you out to our festival someday.
Yeah, that would be nice to be able to travel again with no back thought. That would be wonderful.